any early entries will will get a bit of a voice from us. All right, and we are now live on YouTube and LinkedIn. So, all right, well, I'll mute out, and we'll come back on. Yeah, actually, no, we could probably stay on here.
Why not?
Yeah, don't have to mute until that. Bay, would you be so kind as to look at the YouTube and LinkedIn pages for the BetaCodex network and make sure we're showing live?
Looking right now. YouTube seems fine. LinkedIn is in pre-live, it says, and says the event will start soon. Wait for the host to start.
So let me go to the LinkedIn, their managed streams thing. Prepare to go live. Let's see. Rijon.
Will we know how many people are attending?
There will be some stream analytics that I can see from this side.
All right, good.
I'm a little concerned about LinkedIn is this whole event scheduling. I have a special restreaming software that again I'm curious about how it's going to interplay with the LinkedIn schedule.
Yeah.
So and I'll start recording now too, just to give us some headroom. Yeah, I'll record.
Does the whole LinkedIn thing mean that you're just gonna have to wait until 1?
Pardon?
Does the whole LinkedIn thing, does that just mean you're just gonna have to wait until 1 to actually stream it on there, or?
Possibly.
Because it's still showing up as pre-live for me.
Yeah, because I think that's what. Yeah, again, being that this is a learning process, partially we'll see. Pardon? Pardon, Bay?
Oh no, I didn't say anything.
Oh, okay. And YouTube is live. Yeah, should have
YouTube is
audio as well. That down. I'll change the obs to the second scene to give folks a little bit of the pre on YouTube, the special YouTube viewers out there. Who knows how many there are. And I will not be drinking. Well, who knows if I'll drink coffee during the
That
stream.
is vodka for sure. That's definitely vodka or worse. In the middle of the day.
Well, as long as I don't drink coffee after 3, I'm relatively less annoying.
Yeah, and I mean, today the real question should be, what would Drucker drink?
What now? Did you find anything in the research about what Drucker's
About his habits, no, not so much. I kind of have a hunch, because I even bought books about, with photos of his life, but those weren't very telling. And I had to ask his daughter for approval about the book, so I could figure out what his preferred drinks are. What we know about Deming is that he loved martini. About Deming, we know more about his private life. He composed music as well.
Deming did?
Yes, something like a symphony even, and choir works and that kind of stuff. So Deming was a composer. Yeah. About Drucker, really, I didn't find out anything. I think he was just so passionate as a writer. He wrote his whole life. Yeah. No time for drinking.
What 70 books that Drucker wrote?
No, 34, 39 books, or all in all. 2 novels, and the others are.
Maybe I'm thinking of Deming.
Yeah, but 39 books, that's a lot, right?
Definitely.
For nonfiction especially. And hundreds and hundreds of articles, so he was extremely productive.
Well, we are 2 minutes till the top of the hour. And so maybe I'll go off OBS here. And the LinkedIn view bay, I'm guessing, is still saying pre-live.
Yes.
All right.
My clock is reading 12:58, so maybe give it 2 minutes. I am refreshing though.
Okay. "17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. Right. Excellent.
It is still at pre-live for me.
Well,
Rejoining. Yeah, no. Wait for the host to start. So do you need to do something on your end too?
I think LinkedIn thinks I want to start something.
Because I'm at the event by BetaCodex Network page and I'm pressing the BetaCodex Network live. There we go. Here we are.
We're streaming on?
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. To those of you who may be viewing right now, welcome to the inaugural version of the BetaCodex Network Live. Let me turn on my video to show me, I should say, in full regalia. My name is Ryan Erickson. I am a community enrollment and engagement community organizer for the BetaCodex Network, and I'm happy to welcome you here today to our inaugural version of BetaCodex Network Live. We will be featuring my friend and noted author, Niels Pflaeging, and the discussion today will be related to his new book, What Would Drucker Do? As the follow-up to his most recent book that has come out very, very close to this. So Niels is in a mode, in a groove with releasing books. what would Drucker do? I have started reading it. I've got several quotes in mind of the book of quotes that is here present. At this point, Niels, we'll put your video on, if you would please, and we shall now, if you wouldn't mind saying a few words about your work and your history in general. Welcome to the show today, and Niels, take it away with the brief story of you before we get into the Q&A.
Okay, thank you for the kind introduction. And this is really, I'm delighted that we are doing this BetaCodex Live thing. I might add, we are thinking about doing this frequently, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
This is supposed to be the first of a series of BetaCodex Live events, and we will see how this plays out. We have a second edition already set up, pretty much.
Yes, with Daniel Mezek, that we'll be doing live in June 2nd.
Yeah, but today we want to talk about what would Drucker do?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
What would he do?
Yes, I mean, what would he do? What would he do? And we will talk about this in a moment. So you asked me about what do I usually do? I've been, well, let's approach this from this angle today. I'm the founder of the BetaCodex network, and I've done this I've been in the space of organizational development and change and transformation and leadership for 20 years. And 15 years ago, almost this month, I think, 15 years ago, the BetaCodex network was founded, and I founded it together with Valeria Carvalho from Brazil. And 2003, as we are talking about a book today, in 2003, I published my first book. And at the time, I thought, okay, maybe it would be great if I could publish maybe 20 books in my lifetime. And I'm getting there slowly. I think this would be, not sure if this book counts as being a book.
Of course it counts.
Because it's really a book of Peter Drucker's, right? But yeah, I'm at my own book number 11 or so I could make that happen. And in 2013, 14, I started designing books as well. Not just writing them, but also designing them, like doing the graphic design, the cover design myself at the beginning, together with a graphic designer. And these new books, I've really designed them all by myself, pretty much. So I did everything from concept to get into how that happened, how that came along, and maybe it wouldn't have been possible in other ways to make this happen. Yeah, but with this publishing brand, BetaCodex Press, that we have, I thought this would be feasible to do and a needed book. So usually I do consulting and speaking and organizational development work, and of course workshops as well. But I kind of was a bit earlier this year. I was in the mood to do editing and designing. and
I think I'll write a book.
Think about these people, Peter Drucker. We will talk about him in a moment.
Yeah. So on that note, thank you for giving us some context. The first question I had, and I think that'll lead us into but before we get to the quotes, which I have a favorite quote, you have a couple.
Yeah.
You had really as soon as I became aware of the BetaCodex network, I started seeing the names of new and underappreciated figures in management, and I would say a more charitable interpretation of the work of Frederick Taylor, because Taylor gets a bad rap because of how he was involved with Ford and scientific management and time and motion studies.
Yes. He doesn't deserve the bad rap, right? Right.
And again, this is about, we are all that we are not. Again, Douglas McGregor, the same thing. We are not Theory X people. We are all Theory Y people. Yes. And it's about the mindset of what management thinks. And the name that comes to me associated with you and the BetaCodex network is Mary Parker Follett.
Yes.
And now that to see the two books that have been very popular in the community that is beholden to the rugby-based framework and the manifesto for agile software development.
Yes.
It's all about Drucker, and well, it's all about Deming and Drucker again being popular in the traditional management circles.
Yes, maybe I should explain why I have not done a book of quotes about Mary Parker Follett yet.
Yeah, well, absolutely. If you want to go there first, my question, and then maybe this all ties together, is why Drucker?
Yes.
And why now? And maybe
Yes.
why not Mary Parker Follett first? So
yes. Well, maybe I could start with when I got into the field of organizational development, because I was a finance manager in my first career, the first 5 years of my career, I was a finance manager in Brazil, business controller, my title was at the time. So I came into the field of organizational development from finance management, and I discovered this field of organizational development and change and leadership, and so through the Beyond Budgeting movement, of which I then became part very early on, like second generation. After the founders, I joined. So that was 20 years ago. And of course, through that work and already in my studies, I had studied business administration in Germany. I had always heard about this name, Peter Drucker. I mean, he is the towering figure of business administration. I mean, there are other towering figures like Frederick Taylor, but they are more. At the time I studied business, Peter Drucker was still alive. He only passed away in 2005. So Peter Drucker was the preeminent management thinker of his days, and those days lasted a long time. He passed away when he was 95 years old. So, and of course, through Beyond Budgeting and the BetaCodex work, I always touched base, so to speak. I don't understand anything of baseball, but let me use this expression for a moment. I don't really know anything about baseball, but you know, there were many touch points over time with Peter Drucker's work. But then I only had 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 books of Peter Drucker in my little business library. I remember when I lived in Sao Paulo at the time in the 2000s or so, he appeared online then at big business conferences, still online live. At the time, Zoom didn't exist yet, so, and Microsoft Teams, so that was something very strange, you know, have this old guy appearing on street and talking live to people in Brazil, you know, in a room with 2,000 top managers from Brazil. So he has, for me, he was always this towering figure. He passed away in 2005, aged 95. And since then, of course, he has been very appreciated. Very different than Mary Parker Follett, who is like always half forgotten. Mary Parker Follett is a little
fully
bit like
forgotten, I would say.
More than forgotten. She's a little bit like Babylon 5 in science fiction, right? There's a new Babylon 5 movie coming. Did you hear about this?
I've not heard about this. I haven't even watched the series yet. So I was Battlestar Galactica and The Expanse, of course.
It's coming. It's coming. An animated Babylon 5. But Babylon 5 for science fiction geeks is something like almost forgotten, but everybody talks about. That's like Mary Parker Follett, right? She's literally totally forgotten by most people and ignored. Even Peter Drucker, unfortunately, he said. Unfortunately, he was of the opinion that Mary Parker Follett had not been discriminated by her colleagues and her male colleagues and by the crafters or industry of management at the time. Of course, she was discriminated. She couldn't even make her doctorate. So Mary Parker Follett is like, she's like the founder of BetaCodex, I would say. And Zick and I, with BetaCodex Press, we have a book about Follett in the making. And I cannot talk too much about it. I cannot give away how it will be, but we have a huge book about Mary Parker Follett in the works. It's almost done, really. But we're hesitating to publish it because we want to do something like a reading tour. So Mary Parker Follett, I should have done a book of quotes by Mary Parker Follett, but there is one already in the market.
Oh, really?
Yes. It's not the way that I would have done it, but it exists. So I recommend to buy it. It was done by François Eon, I think that's his name, and a group of researchers. They put together this book a couple of years ago, so it's good. It's very nice. But For this series of books, what would do? I wanted to get into the popular names. Yeah. And the first that came to mind was W. Edwards Deming, who is like the underdog, the alternative guy who still is largely misunderstood. So I did this book, What Would Deming Do, a couple of months ago. And then I thought, okay, who is the wittiest, the thoughtful, the intellectual, the, incredibly impressive thinker of management? And of course, that's Peter Drucker. So Peter Drucker, he had to be honored through this book. He's the perfect guy to make a book of quotes on leadership, management, organizations, societies, economics as well. Yeah. So Peter Drucker was an obvious choice. He is this towering figure of the history of management, scientifically and practically. His name has so much weight as well because he was 7 decades long. He worked on this, and he was a journalist, a writer. So he put out these 39 different books and hundreds of articles, dozens of articles in Harvard Business Review. So he was everywhere at the time. And now I think that the agile movement, the lean movements, and so on, they would do well in respecting, thinking more about him, remembering him, and using his work.
Well, right. Again, this, as we alluded to Deming now being, lifted up, and in terms of the empiricism and that a little bit of the mechanical thought. Oh, this is a process framework. We're going to optimize flow and those sorts of things. Drucker's work, and especially from the quotes, it's for me, it's much more thought provoking, and maybe from a theoretical standpoint, and dare I say artistic. And so that's one thing that will lead me into my favorite quote. And also, in reading the book, I noticed that there's a lot of stuff around self-organization and
Yes.
individual agency, and it's like, this is Mary Parker Follett. That you can see kind of a stream of thinking. So
Yes.
with that, I want to share my favorite quote from the book, and
Okay.
maybe that will I'm sure you probably know which one it is.
No, I have no idea, actually. I have no idea.
So from WIR, which one is that? My gosh, which book is WIR? What, a Wired interview? Oh my God.
Yes.
But the quote,
he said a lot of smart things about the internet at the that was more than 15 years ago, almost 15.
And as relevant now, even more so. So the quote: the model for management that we have right now is the opera. The conductor of an opera has a very large number of different groups that she has to pull together. The soloists, the chorus, the ballet, the orchestra all have to come together, but they have a common score. What we are increasingly talking about today are diversified groups that have to write the score while they perform. What you need now is a good jazz group. And if you want to have a really good jazz group, how large can it be? How large can it be when you have people who improvise on their own and the group realizes that the trumpet player is now playing his solo and everybody needs to stop and support him? You can use 7 to 9 people maximum. I think the trio is the best, but again, 7 to 9 is a great, but maximum. If you get more than that, you have to score.
Yes.
So that was me. Again, I'm a jazzer. That I'm all about the music. So that particular quote, what was for you? Why did that quote make it in the book, and what does that theme say to you?
Yes. Well, when I made the decision to put this book together, I already knew what kind of scope it would have. 180 pages approximately, and that would mean 160, around 160, 165 quotes. Some longer. The one that you just read is longer, maybe the longest one in the book. And of course, here in this book, you will the reader will notice they're just the quotes really, and you can see the source at the bottom of each page and so on, but it's really just the quotes. And then I had this idea, which also came from the book that inspired me, which was called What Would Arnie Do? They also had these Arnold Schwarzenegger quotes grouped into several chapters, you know. And I decided to do the same with What Would Drucker Do? So there are 9 chapters. And then, of course, the big question is, this guy had passed away almost 20 years ago. He worked for 70 years and wrote almost 40 books and 1,500 articles, one source says. So, and he gave interviews, of course, which are beautiful and fantastic. So I decided to pick quotes from his books, of course, but not all, you know, because some of his interviews are, or all of his interviews, if anybody gets interested in Peter Drucker, you don't have to buy the books. Look up some of his interviews, which are just fantastic. Of course, you could read the book and should read the book, because it's the selection process is done with this, yeah. But the interviews are very crisp, very delightful, very witty, which is one of the reasons why Drucker is such an interesting figure to read and to refer to. But one of the questions I asked myself is, okay, how to structure this, and what kind of chapters to group this into. And it couldn't be linear, you know, throughout. It couldn't be quotes from different years of his life and grouped in linear sequence. It would be boring. So I had to group his work, his quotes around topics like the Society of Organizations, which is a big topic for him. Yeah, which he talks about when this came about, the Society of Organizations. He always said it's a recent thing. It only came about, you know, 70, 100 years ago. So today we live in a society of organizations, and that probably will not change. Organizations are here to stay, and most of us work in organizations. Then there's a chapter on the knowledge worker, and the other chapters are grouped around, of course, topics that I think are particularly interesting and that connect well with Drucker's work. And so I think the chapter you just quoted from is the one on decentralization and self-organization, right?
You bet.
And that, of course, is very close to the BetaCodex network, close to my heart, probably yours too. But there are other topics here, like performance and purpose, decisions and agreements, you know, change and transform, innovate and renew, learn and advance. So those other chapters are about key topics that are relevant to us today. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and one of the things for me, and so I, again, looking at the general themes, that was helpful, you know, in navigating the book, and that if you want to go to a certain topic and kind of dig into Drucker's thinking on it, the theming of the book is very well done. And one thing I really liked about it, again, I was kind of fumbling with it as we started, was that every quote is referenced to a bit in the back. I found it much easier and more flow to go through and than a regular footnoting. So it was like, it's kind of like this accelerated footnoting, which I like.
Yes, you only find an abbreviation of the source on the page, so you have to look up what the book or source is, and you can find the referencing there. Yeah. Again, I mean, what really matters to me with this book is I wanted to make it relevant not just to managers and not just about organizations, but also about societies, which is why the title is Nurture Great Organizations and Societies Guided by Peter Drucker's Best Quotes. By the way, Radia, a member of our movement, she helped me with getting the subtitle right for this kind of book. I wanted these book of quotes to be used so that teachers can use it in their teaching at universities, as practitioners in Agile, for example, can get into this kind of work, you know, or managers of all sorts, of course. People working can read this book, but also I wanted to show the political side of Drucker's. And there are a lot of political quotes in this book.
There's lots of political thing, and again, I will refrain from reading the intro to the Change and Transform chapter, which is the one that I say, oh class. It's just
Yes.
that hit me because you mentioned the social aspect of it is
Yes.
that that the intro to the chapter talks about de Tocqueville and talks about this person again, another person who I'd never heard of, this Walter Bacho. And the final thing is that okay, I'll bite. I have to read this part.
Yes.
That the emergence of knowledge as the new central resource and knowledge workers as the new ruling class of a society that is not only post-industrial, but post-socialist and post-capitalist, which is like, okay, so then what is it that we're creating?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that was great. So
can I quote something on capitalism?
I was gonna say I had two quotes. All right, so that's enough for me. So please
but
share your favorite.
That's good. I think it's interesting and important to quote these. That's why I made the book, so that people can throw these quotes at each other and grasp things differently. I mean, Peter Drucker was a great. He thought a lot. He was the hardest thinker of them all, I would say. So, and you can see this especially well in the interviews that were done with him. What a fast and incredibly neat thinker he was. And he always disagreed to everything. And here's, for example, a quote on capitalism. Capitalism as a social order, which is interesting, right? Capitalism as a social order and as a creed is the expression of the belief in economic progress as leading forward the freedom and equality of the individual in the free and equal society. So here in this quote, Drucker says, capitalism is a means to promote freedom and equality or equity. Yes. So he was by no means always talking critically about capitalism. He didn't use it as this fighting word to be against, But he also uphold, of course, that in this you can see this very well, that organizations or companies are not there to make a profit, and capitalism is not there to make people rich. It is supposed to be a social order to promote society, democracy. Yeah.
The equality of markets and things. And this is where, again, that Drucker's focus being in management and in management theory and practice.
Yes, that's what he's most famous for. Yeah.
What he's most, and then we talk about capitalism. Then you go on to the Milton Friedman idea of, well, the only purpose of a company is to provide value for the shareholders.
Yeah,
I'm like,
Drucker was totally opposed to that, of course, totally opposed.
So, and again, this is about what we're talking about when we go from from alpha and to beta. So if you wouldn't mind at this point, you can share a couple more quotes that you like. I'm gonna check and see if we've got any. Actually, our producer, if our producer can see if we have any comments in the YouTube or LinkedIn.
Yes. Should I quote maybe something that is about careers and about us, the knowledge workers?
Sure.
There's one here that I had to mark today for today's session. So this is more about for everyone who's watching this and listening in. Of course, Peter Drucker, he coined the term knowledge worker already in the late 60s. So he's kind of the inventor of this term, the knowledge aid, the knowledge worker, and of giving us all this thinking around knowledge work. And one of the things he also was very critical about, what will happen if we have this knowledge society dawning on us? And of course, it is here in full swing already for a long time. And he wondered about the practical implications like this one. What to do with the second half of one's life as a knowledge worker? Yeah? Knowledge workers are able physically to keep on working into old age and well beyond any traditional retirement age. But they run a new risk. They may become mentally finished. What's commonly called burnout, he already used this term at the time, the most common affliction to the 40-something knowledge worker, burnout, the most common affliction to the 40-something knowledge worker is very rarely the result of stress. Its all too common cause is boredom on the job. The risk of knowledge work is boredom on the job that gets us finished in our 40s, And that's the real risk of, going into mental retirement early and then not being capable to do anything more productive. And I see this happening, actually. Not sure if you see this happening among your peers. I see this happening with lots of people, bored out, and of course what Drucker always warned, and he himself was the best example of a practitioner of this. He always went to every few years he went into a different interest and then taught at the university about it. He taught about Japanese art and that kind of things at the university, and many other things that we wouldn't know about. So because he believed, really, he was a fervent believer in this lifelong learning philosophy. He really took it seriously, keeping commenting on economics and management, and keep being on track, learning forever, so that you do not have to go into mental retirement too early.
And this to me, what very comes into very sharp focus is, a theory that I have, that the idea of a professional musician, that the studio musicians, that they and jazz musicians, of course, they would affiliate into small groups. They would self-organize into units of delivering value to the market. And also, I think the lifelong learning, the jazz musicians into their 80s, and so that, and they're still actively performing.
Yes, it's Ron Carter's birthday today. Is he 88, 90 years old? I'm not sure how old he is.
He's above 85.
And of course, Quincy Jones is 89 or something. And he had this kind of incredible career as well, going through from being one of the world's best trumpet players to arranger, composer, learning classical music as well in between, when he was 40 or something, and doing movies, producing Michael Jackson, of course, doing pop music, And
so this idea, I would say that the culture and the society of the professional musician is kind of a vanguard to what we're seeing now in terms of what knowledge workers may have offering to them in terms of federalization, it's dynamic authorization and self-organization, and again, a decentralized value stream for serving a market need. So that gets me excited in terms of helping. If I'm going to engage with an organization, it's not a practitioner but an advisor, to go through the musical route.
Yeah, musicians and artists, they were always knowledge workers, but they were such a tiny minority. And what Peter Drucker, of course, analyzed correctly in the 1960s already was that this would be the future of the worker. The worker would not be that cog in the machine, corporate machine, that's madman like corporate slave, but required to think on their feet, to be lifelong learners, acting in complex contexts with each other, acting with each other, for each other, and so he was really the sage of the knowledge age, Peter Drucker, and he also thought through what kind of consequences this would have for organizations and societies and the knowledge world, right? Which is particularly interesting. What if we all have musicians like careers? What does that really mean? Yeah, and for organizations, he was also the prophet of decentralization. In 1967, I think he wrote this. No, 1973. He wrote this important book called Management, and where he wrote extensively about decentralization and why it was the most economic, the smartest way to run an organization, not having centralized or siloed organizations, but decentralized. You already quoted about this thing that teams should have a size limit of maybe 9 people, because then you have to score. Then it cannot work as like a jazz band. And here, just to quote something else about decentralization, he said, "Federal decentralization has great clarity and considerable economy. It makes it easy for each member of the autonomous business to understand his own task and to understand the task of the whole business. It has high stability and is yet adaptable." So he is really the prophet of what we promote as the BetaCodex network.
Yeah. Well, so we do have a question from the chat, and also I would say, before I say the question, he needed someone to title his books better. So management. Okay, well, what's his book about? It's about
There was a
management.
longer title, by the way. I should quote the full title. It was called Management, Tasks, Responsibilities, Practice. Still a bullshit title.
Yeah.
Today that wouldn't rock anymore. The
Mm.
industry, the book industry has changed a lot. And this is,
Yeah.
it happened in the 70s that he wrote these books.
Yeah, so we'll give him some grace with that. So
Yeah.
the question we have from YouTube, and someone I think you know, John Jorgensen asks, what kind of organizational societies did Drucker advocate for? I'm talking about that. Did Drucker explicitly offer practical means for eliciting any such organizational society?
Not quite sure about the question. Organizational society, the society of organizations, if he had advice about that?
Yeah,
Of course, yeah.
that
I
appears
mean,
to be a fair interpretation, and so we
yeah, I
may
mean,
have a
one of the first quotes in this book is this, maybe a starting point. I think it's the first quote. Yeah, the first real quote of this book. An organization is not like an animal, an end to itself. It's successful by the mere act of perpetuating the species. An organization is an organ of society and fulfills itself by the contribution it makes to the outside environment. So, and this is just one of the quotes in this chapter, Society of Organizations, and this is it may seem a simple thing to say, but Peter Drucker really had this insight that democracy can only be developed and made better through organizations. I mean, let's remember, he was born in 1900 in Vienna. At the beginning of the 1930s, he had to emigrate to, oh, by the way, first he started his professional career in Germany, in Frankfurt and in Hamburg. And then because the Nazis rose to power, fascism rose to power, he had to emigrate first to England. And then in 1937, he emigrated to the United States. He wasn't a Jew, but he was in his family. There were Jews, so he certainly had to emigrate, and he was smart enough to do that. So he worked as a journalist, then went into management. So during his journalist years in Germany, he published very critical things about fascism. That's another reason why he had to emigrate. He was very critical of fascism early on, in the early 30s, and this very much formed his view on the role of organizations. Organizations should, as he says here, should make a contribution to the outside. In another quote here in the book, he says, companies are not here to make money. They are there to create a better world and contribute to society. One of the quotes, the quote that I put on the back is, performing responsible management is the alternative to tyranny and our only protection against it, which expresses well that Drucker thought that we can only protect democracies against fascism and tyranny more generally through well-performing, functional democratic organizations. And looking at the situation that we have now, which is why this book is so contemporary, of course, our societies are in danger in the United States, in England, a little bit even in Germany, certainly in France and so on, and other countries. Our democracies are in danger because our organizations have not been democratic enough. I mean, in our work lives, we are not experiencing actual democracy. We are experiencing command and control, alpha, as we call it in our movement, right?
Authoritarianism, totalitarian
and
control.
Even the agile movement has turned authoritarian, went to the dark side and turned evil into the agile industrial complex. And so in a way, even agile and lean today predominantly promote tyranny, organizational tyranny, and that we cannot accept that. We have to change that. And this is another reason, I think, why Peter Drucker is such an important thinker for our times, because he was a promoter, like Deming, the promoter of democracy. Fervent. And again, saying only through functioning organizations, he said, through functional management, we can promote better societies and more equity and welfare.
I do have another question. I think both are from John. Thanks for coming, John. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for joining.
So I'm going to choose the one that is most salient and alive with me right now. What would Drucker say about AI completing tasks which knowledge workers have previously done.
Oh, he said a lot about it, actually. Of course, at the time, people weren't foolish enough to call AI because it was never AI. AI is something from science fiction, right? But Drucker made in the book. I chose a couple of excellent quotes of Drucker's about technology, but I have to find them first. I think they're more towards the end. But what he would have said about technology is certainly that you cannot solve certain problems by technology. But I would have to look it up for a moment to find it. Maybe you can find it in parallel. What I wanted to add is, here's another one that's lovely about doom and what evil in organizations. Beware charisma. Charisma is hot today. There is an enormous amount of talk about, and an enormous amount of books are written about the charismatic leader. But the desire for charisma is a political death wish. I think very temporary, very contemporary, very to the point in our times. What I see on LinkedIn happening, 99% is about the great leader. We are back again at heroism, corporate leader heroism and other terribly authoritarian stuff.
So this is also a quote that I saw, and there was a quote about management needing to be concerned about good and evil.
Yes. Management always deals with the nature of man and with good and evil. That's the quote here in the book. Yes. I was just at the same page. Yes. We are on the same page, Ryan, as always.
I believe so. So at this point, we are kind of a little bit past the time. Would you so we'll close that. And for those of you out there, if you stay in the YouTube chat or in LinkedIn, we'll have a special gift for you after we close the stream. So would any parting words you'd like to say about either the BetaCodex network, the book? So this is the floor again for you to close this out.
Yeah, well, first get the book, get What Would Drucker Do? I think it's worth thinking like Peter. It's worth thinking like Peter Drucker, thinking about Peter Drucker's work. This is a great starting point. Of course, nobody here is saying that you should only read this book about Peter Drucker's work. Of course, you should read more, but this is a great starting point. This is something to share. It's tiny, it's cute, it's very, very cool, very neatly designed. By the way, there are nice photos of Drucker as well in the book. More than you would find in any other Drucker book, by the way, I can say. So this is beautifully designed, worth doing, of course, or reading and getting and reading. And the other thing is the Deming book. That might be a good matter. And of course, within our community, I would like to say that we should do more in this direction, as a means to help people grasp these beautiful ideas, these beautifully democratic ideas about organizing and organizational leadership and change and learning also and sustainability that are in these books and in these thinkers' minds. And we can still use it. That's so beautiful about the legacy of thinkers like Peter Drucker.
Great. Well, thank you, Niels, for playing with me here today and engaging in the inspiring thoughts of a great management thinker, Peter Drucker. Buy the book. I would recommend buying it from Red 42 directly in BetaCodex Press.
It's also on Amazon and everywhere. So
yes, Amazon everywhere. Again, just a plug for that. At this point, I think I'll take the stream down. And for those of you, again, on YouTube and LinkedIn, we will have a special link for you that we'll talk about there. So thanks again, Niels, and be well. And we shall do this again.
Let's meet again soon for another BetaCodex Live conversation.
Absolutely.